There are two important things I need to tell you about super quick. First is that I wrote a book about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's a mix of film analysis and personal memoir. It took me forever to write, but it's about one of my favorite movies, and I'm extremely proud of it. I'll link it in the description below if you're interested in grabbing a copy. Second is that I have a Patreon where I release exclusive videos. We have one about American Psycho, another about Sabrina Carpenter and Baby Girl and the Piano Teacher, another about Materialists. Just last month, we did one comparing every version of Wuthering Heights in preparation for one very contentious film coming out next year. And next month, we're releasing one about Tar, which I think is the best film of the century so far. If you're interested in any of that, along with early access to YouTube videos and input on video topics, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for hearing me out. Now enjoy the video.
When I went to see one battle, I went with a big group of friends, and we were running into other groups of guys who we knew, who were all there at the opening screening. But when I tell anyone normal about the movie, they haven't even heard of it. With people my age, I feel like he's part of this sort of letterboxed crowd who will now come in for the big directors. And I think he's grouped in with, like, it's an event to go see the new Greta Gerwig. It's an event to see Jordan Peele. It's an event to go see a PTA. It's a cool thing for young people online to know about this. But there is the consistent and very true joke that it's all guys. Guys are obsessed with him and are gonna, like, corner you at a party and tell you about it. Yep. Yeah, guilty as charged.
I pointed at Seb in case anyone hears my voice. So that's what I just did. Richard Brody recently got on a podcast to talk about auteurs, but ended up mostly talking mad shit. Just kidding. But he did say that today there are a lot of filmmakers whose names are recognizable, with distinctive filmmaking styles, so much as to warrant their own genre of film. He says, and yet, the films themselves, the aesthetic, is not in fact something I might find inspiring or exciting. I have no idea who he's talking about here, but I do sometimes wonder if people think that about Paul Thomas Anderson. I don't. Not all the time, at least. But there are some moments where I'm amidst a horde of guys, like the one my friend Seb was referencing, and feel that the fervor for PTA's movies is a bit outsized. Don't be mistaken, I am a huge fan of PTA. Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood, and more recently Phantom Thread, were game-changing for me. But it feels like my love for his movies comes nowhere close to that of the boys I know. And while I thought they were good, mostly based on the sheer inertia of PTA's talents, I did think Licorice Pizza and One Battle After Another were deeply flawed films. You can check out my Letterboxd or this video here for more information about that. And yet, the reactions from PTA's devotees would give you very different impressions of these films. It seems he's cultivated an audience primarily of young men who treat every movie he makes as if it's Citizen Kane, regardless of whether or not it deserves that title. PTA is not the obvious choice for a film bro filmmaker. Like, Scorsese does gangster movies, and Tarantino loves ultra-violent fantasies of Nazi and slave owner slayings. PTA, of course, sometimes crosses over with that subject matter, but he casts a pretty wide net with movies about Scientology and fashion ateliers, and he writes lines like this:
I have a love in my life. It makes me stronger than anything you can imagine.
Not exactly the kind of stuff you'd immediately associate with bro culture. So I'm curious, how has PTA developed such a following? I'm just a girl. So I brought together a horde, a gaggle, a murder, if you will, of boys, my boys, to help me out with this one. Let it be known that these boys are not the boys I'm necessarily referring to in this video. All of these guys are super talented filmmakers in their own right with a broad interest in movies. They're also my friends, so please be nice to them. Patrick, you go first.
Well, I think that men gravitate towards figures that can be initialized. PTA, DFW, JFK.
Every time his movie comes out, It feels like a event movie. Like it's my version of Infinity War coming out. One battle after another coming out felt like the Super Bowl, like in a way for me. I think it's just we yearn for the event film, and there's not so much of that left. And it happens whenever Tarantino has a movie come out, and it happens whenever Paul Thomas Anderson has a movie come out. Wes Anderson's kind of lost that. He sort of diluted his brand in my mind. It always feels like you're going to get something new every time you watch one of his movies. And there's something about the world that he creates that absorbs you immediately.
In his book about PTA, my favorite film critic Adam Nayman talks about how what's often at stake in the reception of PTA's films is nothing less than the status of a heroic, indeed mythic, auteurism. And I think mythic is the right word for it.
There's almost like this lore around him in making Boogie Nights and Magnolia and then taking like 5 years off filmmaking and then making movies only every 5 years. When I was 13 and getting really into film and decided that I was going to be a director, he was almost like the gold standard of like, he directed Boogie Nights when he was like 28? And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, that's what I'm going to do.
We just inherited like Wes Anderson and all these guys. When we were at the age to watch movies, we were already told these are amazing filmmakers. So I don't know if there's as much like critical analysis watching that. He's not a new filmmaker to us.
Similar to Tarantino, PTA is talked about like a gateway filmmaker if you're just starting to get interested in film.
I think pretty young, like 12-ish, that age, I was on the IMDb list. I feel like that's where a lot of people start, all the Film Braille classics. Magnolia was in there, so I watched that. He's like film 102 in the Film Bro canon. First you get Tarantino and Shawshank Redemption and Fincher, Fight Club, all that stuff. But then you get a tiny bit deeper because they are weirder. They're a little less straightforward. And they are, I think, divisive. Like a lot of people hate the part where everyone sings the Amy Mann song or the Rain of Frogs in Magnolia.
And there's something really comforting in watching his movies because it's very much kind of an entry level into film in a sense. You can go deeper and you get into Altman, you get into like Ozu, and you can go Wim Wenders. But he's like, you look up best American directors and he's up there easily.
You'd watch a documentary like Visions of Light that goes through all like the history of cinematography, and they would talk about Gordon Willis, who like shot The Godfather. You're going like, wow, like the 70s was so great. Like it's like the natural next step is Paul Thomas Anderson movies or Tarantino movies or Coen Brothers movies. You took that home and you would watch that on your own time. Like we never like were taught even about the 90s independent movement in film class. It also had that edge where it was like, this is cool. They're
some of the last vestiges of the 90s indie boom, where it was like all these cool directors who were operating independently. And most of them have fallen off creatively or career-wise. They're definitely two whose work has remained so acclaimed and so beloved.
Importantly, I think PTA is able to strike a good balance between art and commercialism, kind of like Christopher Nolan, that makes him feel approachable and exciting.
I remember watching all these interviews with him when I was first kind of getting obsessed. And there's this great interview when he's got to be like 28 after he did Boogie Nights. And he's like talking about like porn and like eating a pizza. And he's wearing like a baggy t-shirt. And he just looks like a dude and not like a director. He seemed accessible. Like he's on the other end of the Herzog philosopher director. He just seemed like a frat guy, almost director in a sense, even though he's more than just that.
Sam is right. PTA isn't blowing stuff up or trying to blow our minds the way Christopher Nolan is. But is he more than that? And if he is, why is he still so appealing to young men?
When I was 12, I really wanted to go see Sweeney Todd with Johnny Depp in it. We get to the movie theater, that movie's sold out, and it was just me and my dad. And he's like, let's go see There Will Be Blood. I always thought that my dad told me it was sold out just because he didn't want to see Sweeney Todd. We ended up watching There Will Be Blood. You know, obviously flew right over my head. I was very confused by a lot of it. That was a formative experience, I would say, in my young life. And it was with my father. Maybe the irony around you talking about fathers and PTA, and that's my first experience with PTA.
What part of this movie is about you?
All of it, and that's not being really all of it. We all have families that we, have to figure out and deal with and try and explore what went wrong. Families is just endless, juicy ammunition for great stories, you know. They're never going to let you down for good drama.
What is your problem?
So PTA grew up in the San Fernando Valley in the 70s and 80s. He was the child of Ernie Anderson, the host of a Cleveland-based late-night TV show in which he played the character of a mad scientist named Ghoulardi. PTA was in awe of his rather distant father and fought for attention as the youngest sibling in a household of 3 older sisters and many half-siblings. He says that this fight for attention made him scrappy and gave him the pushiness he needed to kickstart his career. And in just about every film of his, you can feel the influence of these family dynamics. There are the tough love sisters in Punch Drunk Love that fuel Barry's constant state of anxiety and low self-worth. There's mommy issues, present in Boogie Nights with Julianne Moore's character bestowing maternal love upon her helpless castmates.
She's a mother to all those who need love.
Only the best thing in the world that's happened to me since my son went off.
Especially Dirk Diggler, whose own mother, apparently modeled after PTA's, is discouraging and cold. And Freddie's mysteriously absent mother in The Master.
Where's your mother? I don't know, Lily.
The film ending with a shot of Freddie lying oedipally next to a pair of breasts carved out in the sand. And most overtly in Phantom Thread, where Reynolds Woodcock misses his late mother dearly and unconsciously wishes to be taken care of, despite being a rather despotic boss and artist. And then, well, you can't forget the whole daddy thing.
There's something to be said that all men have a complex relationship with their father at the same time, and I think you can see those in all of his movies.
So it seems that most of the guys I spoke to were fed a 90s media diet of Tarantino, Jarmusch, and PTA. But scholar Jason Sperb hypothesizes that PTA, a generation older, was fed on something very different. That is, the sentimental films of Reagan's 80s. Films like Back to the Future and Field of Dreams, which always contained a key ingredient, the father figure. And looking at PTA's filmography, this makes sense. Yes, a lovely dog could have written the script for Field of Dreams. It is so fucking silly. See my male weepies video for that. But when it comes down to it, many PTA films are basically a rich man's Field of Dreams, ripe with the search for daddy. Right from his first film, Heart 8, a play on Melville's Bob LaFlambeur, we get a divorced, loner, senior gambler named Sidney who takes in 2 foundlings as his own, a troubled young homeless man named John and a cocktail waitress named Clementine who moonlights as an escort. The relationship between Sidney and John is particularly tender, especially with the seedy backdrop of Las Vegas casino culture behind it. In his next film, Boogie Nights, there's the sweet porn director Jack Horner, who takes in Dirk Diggler and the other lost boys and girls of the industry. Even There Will Be Blood, arguably PTA's most nihilistic film, features a complicated relationship between Daniel Plainview and the orphaned boy H.W. Throughout the movie, you can't fully tell if Plainview, a man almost entirely devoid of soul to the point that in some shots he resembles the devil, actually feels love for his son. PTA keeps you guessing right up until the very end, but when HW tells Plainview he's starting his own company, I truly think you can see the hurt and betrayal in Plainview's eyes. Another surrogate father is the L. Ron Hubbard-coded Lancaster Dodd in The Master, who takes in the drifter veteran Freddie. Freddie is a traumatized individual who is all id and very much treated like a pet by Dodd.
Silly animal. I couldn't help it.
Their relationship is quite similar to Heart 8 in that we have an unruly adopted son who must be tamed by a refined but seedy father figure. PTA saw something of an artistic surrogate father in director Robert Altman. He featured a song from Popeye and Punch Drunk Love, he dedicated There Will Be Blood to Altman the year he passed away, and the two even had a real-life rapport. And you can absolutely feel the influence of Altman in PTA's work, to the point that people have accused him of ripping Altman off. With its multi-linear, meandering, and overlapping large ensemble storylines, Magnolia is clearly in the vein of Nashville and Shortcuts. And Magnolia, well, that's like Daddy Inception. The film was made shortly after Ernie passed away, and we can really see PTA reckoning here with the loss of such a complicated presence in his life. We have a little boy named Stanley who's forced into showbiz by his overbearing father.
Dad, you need to be nicer to me.
Go to bed.
You have to be nicer to me, Dad.
There's another shitty showbiz daddy in the form of a game show host, familiar, named Jimmy Gator, who the film strongly hints abused his daughter Claudia, an addict who just happens to fall for a guy with the same name as her dad. And then there's another shitty showbiz daddy, Earl Partridge, the father of Frank Mackey. Earl is on his deathbed and recounts to his PSW Phil that his greatest regret in life is cheating on his late wife and leaving Frank to take care of her in her illness. Frank is now a famous pickup artist and clearly attempting to reclaim some form of masculinity that he feels was stolen from him by his father. But there is a specific angle to these themes that PTA is coming from, and won't hit all of us the same way. I think PTA's films do a great job of exploring the near impossible relationships we have with the families we're born into. What happens to us if those families fall away,
Or if you figure a way to live without serving a master, any master, then let the rest of us know, will you?
and whether it's possible to find what we're looking for in other people.
I love you, Mom. I want you to be my mom, Amber. Are you my mom?
A found family.
I was talking to my sister last night about PTA, and she was basically like, I think boys identify or like those movies in a certain age group because they can just fully put themselves in those movies. She's like, those movies were inaccessible to me. It's like when you're watching Inherent Vice, you feel like Doc Sportello. Paul Thomas Anderson is a pervert. Like, you know, it's isolating. If my theory that he's working through personal issues is correct, that will probably hit men a lot more than it will like my sister, because he's working through a boy relationship with their daddy. She's like, I don't really have those same issues.
Ultimately, fatherhood is the main pursuit of PTA's filmmaking, both literally and metaphorically, in men who wish to dominate others, to be the daddy, or to be subordinated like a son.
It's really hard, I don't know, to get people to pay attention to people talking.
PTA's films are without a doubt very compelling. Most of them are over 2 hours long, yet they demand your attention and rarely let it drop. This is because he's extremely proficient at what he does. Born to a showbiz father and growing up in Hollywood, PTA had access to filmmaking instruments at a time where the best you could get was your parents' very likely limited home video collection and a dream. His dad was the first in their neighborhood to own a Betamax camera that PTA used a lot. He also had 2 VCRs, a Laserdisc player, and a computer in his room. This made it easy to develop his skills earlier than most, such that by the time he got to NYU Film School, he dropped out after a few days because, in his words, I learned everything I needed to know. By the time he was coming of age in the 90s, things were going digital, and watching movies at home was becoming commonplace. This changing technology had a huge impact on PTA, who taught himself both the technical elements of filmmaking and an appreciation for the art form itself. And that impact has had a ripple effect on his audience.
Well, I feel like it comes from like the era I was born in. Being drawn to PTA feels like everyone is born in the mid-90s. That was the Tarantino PTA era. Tarantino came out of an era to where movies become VHS, and it's like then suddenly all of this is so accessible and you can reference it so readily, and your audience is now so well versed in the cinematic experience that they can get your references. Where like I think a lot of filmmakers before, you'd go to the theater and watch some art movie from France like once, and then that would be in you and you'd think of that shot, but you wouldn't be able to cut and paste it into your movie. That was the first era where you have like people literally doing shot for shot remake.
Well, the idea of the firecrackers actually comes from 2 places. It's a distant piece of background action in a movie called Putney Swope, directed by my idol Robert Downey Sr. And there's this scene where this guy gets off the elevator, Wing Sony, who's coming to this new mousetrap device, and he's got this sort of sidekick, and this guy's behind him, and just sort of pap, 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 and then he says 3 or 4 words, and they get back on the elevator. Yeah. And I was like, I called Bob up, and I was like, this is the greatest thing, and I want to take it, I want to run it through a whole scene and make it foreground action, you know, and I want to like say that it's my idea. And he was like, great.
I think in terms of style, the reason it's so impactful as like a young man is it just as the internet was coming, so there was the accessibility of all this media. You could really like track the lineage of these filmmakers, finding the stuff that influenced him. And wow, like he's copying this weird, obscure French movie. There's an excitement to that.
And this is why film bros like his movies so much, is that he's extremely film literate. It's his second language. He just intuitively gets it because he's watched a lot of movies. You can trace the history of cinema through his movies. Every movie he makes is related to 5 other movies. He's a really good writer, paired with just extreme film acumen.
PTA is an amazing writer. Like, he's written all his movies himself, and they're generally super intelligent and thoughtful, which we're gonna elaborate on a little bit later.
You see so much description of what the character's supposed to be feeling and stuff in screenplays, and it's just a big mistake. It has to be done through dialogue and what they do. The scripts that I write for them are very clean. They're sort of very clean of a lot of sort of flowery explanation of what they're supposed to be feeling. I think the actors really appreciate that.
The most specific camera moves are written into the script.
He once said that a film's success is almost entirely contingent upon having a good script, that if the writing holds up, then you have a good shot of your film being good. 3 times now he's adapted Thomas Pynchon's work, which is borderline unadaptable, and manages to do it in a way that's both faithful to the cores of these works, yet comprehensible. He's a canary in a coal mine of directors who are all visual, but can't write a decent script to save their lives. Like, everyone's a writer-director, but no one's a director who can write, if you feel me.
You know, it's all about how you tell the story, and there's just not very many good storytellers nowadays.
PTA's style has evolved quite a bit over time, but what holds true is that always, without a doubt, his technical filmmaking, and especially his camera work, is going to be excellent. Starting out, we got that extremely flashy camera. Especially in Boogie Nights, right from that spinning opening shot followed by an extended long take, you can tell he's showing off his skills here.
Something I really would like to emulate is the frantic quality. He does that better than like almost anyone else. Kind of like the coked out feeling of Magnolia and Boogie Nights.
Like, I think there's something about Boogie Nights and Magnolia when you watch it where it's like almost like an ADHD movie where it's just so quick and so fast and it's always moving. And it's great for like a teenager to watch.
Adam Sandler being in Punch Drunk Love clearly wasn't the only thing the Safdies were pulling from when they made Uncut Gems. Punch Drunk Love also has that same sense of sheer panic and chaos, a distressed camera and constant percussive score happening at all times. This frantic quality has relaxed a bit though since There Will Be Blood. Lately his films have become more stoic and restrained, yet managed to be just as attention-grabbing. PTA's camera has always been renegade, refusing to fix itself onto anything.
Like, he might have even introduced like the unmotivated, debatably useless, just like tracking shot for no reason. Like, the camera's just always kind of pushing in or like doing something. So it always feels like you're on the edge of something amazing is gonna happen, or like it's always like cinematic because the camera's just always moving.
I want the money to get a dolly and to do the stuff that he does, to get the Steadicam and do the kind of movement that he does in his films.
That dolly shot pushing in on any and everything has you holding your breath. It's hinting that something important is near, but that important thing is actually just the movie as a whole. Sperb sees these Steadicam shots as lacking a point of view, right? His films, especially Boogie Nights, are almost panoramic. Like the characters, the camera is searching for something, always out of reach. Or as Sperb puts it, it's a search for meaning within an essentially meaningless world.
I think he makes very fun, digestible movies. They're also like high level of filmmaking, but they're like fun and they move and they're paced really well. You get all the things you'd get from like European movie or even like an old Hollywood movie, but paced in like very like modern style.
He even said this in an interview. Before you convey something artistic, you also have to entertain. And as much as I love the Haneke, Herzog, Wim Wenders world of filmmaking, there is a bit of a dryness that you kind of have to like lean into with those movies. Or Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, is still there to entertain you. He's there to entertain and also illuminate.
So what we're getting here is a director with extreme film acumen, like a highbrow European director like Haneke, but with all the film and pop culture knowledge of a Tarantino, who's making really gorgeous images, but also referencing film history with an incredible amount of ease.
I think the gateway thing, it causes like, well, you don't know about this aspect of this filmmaker. So it creates this like sense of niche culture and if you know culture, which I think is very enticing to a young teenage boy.
A cult is made from the establishment of an in-group and internal language and customs that are distinctive to that group. And from the knowing guffaws in the theater at the least timely moments of one battle after another, I can say that PTA definitely has an if you know kind of cult following.
So I go to watch this, I'm watching this Fuji print and it just sounds fucking terrible and I'm kind of freaking out. But it was long enough after the movie was finished, that I started sort of calming down. I wasn't trying to control every element. And I said, if I can't enjoy this bad Fuji print, have I done my job in terms of making the movie? This movie should be able to come off. Do I want to be the guy that has a Kodak print in here and it's precise and perfect and that's the only way it can work? Or do I want to be the guy that goes, yeah, I know, it looks like shit, it sounds like shit, but you liked it, didn't you?
I say PTA is a super skillful director, but he's not exactly Stanley Kubrick. And what I mean by that is that within our conception of the auteur, we usually imagine a Kubrickish dictator who runs his set like a battleship, where the director has final say on everything and every part of the process is meticulously thought out beforehand. Like I said though, PTA cares mostly about a good script and everything else comes after.
You can see the references, which I do find interesting, but it also feels like he can't quite pull off the references. The mistakes in his movies are actually what makes them the most human and the most powerful, where like he's in his own way, and like his personality's in his own way. He's letting the actors do whatever they want, he's to an extent, and he's letting people really bring the craziest version of themselves to these things, where other filmmakers, I think, who rip off these movies are trying to be like Stanley Kubrick or something, and they're really meticulous and controlling, and it's very freeing to watch. Mistakes in terms of one battle after another, there are many like cinematography mistakes. So I find that very funny. You're like, that shot's out of focus. Like this is debatably poorly lit, or on a cinema level, he's not doing it perfectly. He's going, oh, this actor wanted to do this for the scene and now we're reshaping it. I guess it's not mistakes so much, but it's like, you're not trying to follow a pacing.
A true student of Altman, PTA is extremely collaborative with his actors and likes to let their performances run loose.
When I watched The Master, I was like hooked on every moment, and the performances are so crazy. He was doing this thing with Joaquin Phoenix where they're on the verge of the whole movie up, and they're always just kind of pulling it off. Like it is like almost a slapstick comedy, that whole movie, but he's like imbuing it with some sort of drama.
There's this story about how Joaquin Phoenix was feeling debilitated by his scoliosis on the set of The Master, and so would lean into this hunch that PTA just kept in the movie. And it's bizarre, but it brings so much flavor to Freddy's characterization. In Magnolia, Tom Cruise and Julianne Moore have the dial on their characters' emotions cranked up as high as it can go, but PTA manages to match it with the extreme melodrama of their settings. Cruise especially turns what should be a joke character into one of the most riveting performances committed to cinema. I don't have to say much about Daniel Day-Lewis because we all know how intensely he devotes himself to his projects. I mean, he's like pouring sweat out of every orifice in every single shot of There Will Be Blood. But even Mark Wahlberg is astounding in Boogie Nights. He and all the characters deliver their lines with this veneer of camp that makes them empathetic, but still laughable. It's also really hard to convincingly act as badly as they do in the porno scenes. PTA has a knack for capturing people's unique attributes. What I remember most from Licorice Pizza is less so the plot than how beautifully he shoots Alana Haim's face. Like, it's truly mesmerizing to look at.
It's about sort of being a good dad and just making sure they conserve their energy. It's not even like me as the director. It's like I'm there just to be the guy who's just maybe kind of fun to hang out with. The script is the director.
He picks great collaborators. Like a PTA film, it's also a Johnny Greenwood film. It's also a Philip Seymour Hoffman film. It's also a Thomas Pynchon film.
I think we have patience for like amazing performers, and like we just naturally want to watch that.
It's like a secret sauce that you can't go wrong on. You're relying on character over story. So even if he rips a story off of Altman, it's so within the characters, and the characters end up driving the story, that you're just hooked on whoever's on screen. That is the secret sauce of filmmaking. If you can make it about the people, that's the one thing you can't replicate. Like you could never find another Joaquin Phoenix and recreate The Master.
He also, like Altman, doesn't take himself too seriously. His films have a subtle humor to them.
He likes a little belly. And the shoe polish on the front of the dress.
Shoe polish from what?
From his shoe.
I'm finished.
Corrective teeth surgery.
What is that?
Braces.
Braces?
Yes.
You don't need braces.
Yes, I do.
Your teeth are fine. Your teeth are straight.
I don't like myself sometimes. Can you help me?
Barry, I'm a dentist.
Wait, no, please. Ow! Ow!
You told me you're an able-bodied seaman and you're looking for work.
I told you? Yeah, will you have any?
Shut up, Bill. You're embarrassing me.
Think this means that maybe you ought to think about getting some new shit? What do you think?
I think heaven has sent you here, Dirk Diggler.
What's that? Oh.
My initials.
Oh, that's so imaginative. How did you think that?
Look, I've been referred to more than one time by the LA Times as a Renaissance detective.
I watched a lot of the Coen brothers. That, in my mind, still is kind of what a real movie is. That made me think and realize that I wanted movies that had humor and were serious about real topics. There's not this rigid separation of this is a serious movie, this is a funny movie. There Will Be Blood is like his most serious movie, but you know, I Drink Your Milkshake is funny. It's disturbing because it's kind of funny. And a very low-key sense of humor. Understatement, which again I think is from Altman, but he does really well. Visuals that are funny without being overstated. The compositions are funny. The first shot of Joaquin in The Master I think is so fantastic. He's peeking out over the bank of sand at the beach, and he's so funny, and it introduces him like so perfectly. But it's not like he's like falling over or something.
Robert Altman is one of my favorite directors, but he is from an older generation and so wouldn't have as much draw for guys my age as PTA would. PTA is this generation's Altman. Aside from the obvious influence, he views film as a collaborative art form and is willing to make a bit of a mess. And he has that same maverick spirit that Altman did, which can be very attractive to young men.
I do feel like with Paul Thomas Anderson's work, it's not trying to be good. It's just being itself, and it's not trying to go off of looks or go off of style, and it manages to be really stylistically interesting while also having like characters that feel human and feel real and feel emotional. I think he's probably influenced me in ways that I don't even realize. I love the sprawling characters, having a lot of characters. That's always something that I've wanted to do in movies. There's something really attractive about kind of throwing as much as you can at the wall and then pulling it back together at the end.
Kiarostami said this. Silent movie filmmakers made movies based on plays and literature. That was their inspo. That's what they were pulling from. The next generation was watching plays, reading literature, and then watching those movies, the silent movies. And then the next generation didn't watch plays anymore, took some from literature and watched movies. And then it got to a point where like movies was just an incestuous thing that they only watched movies.
So I'm sure you've heard us compare PTA to Tarantino a number of times. It's kind of hard not to, like they are quite similar. Both are lifelong Peter Bogdanovich-style cinephiles from LA who skipped film school and instead taught themselves filmmaking by watching the masters. They both use interlocking storylines, they came up around the same time in the 90s, both are kings of the needle drop, and both have become deities to film bros, to some extent or another. Tarantino and PTA also worship pop culture, and their works are postmodern collages of these pop culture and film references. But while I do like Tarantino, I think people have caught on to the fact over the years that his films tend to rely on the same ultra-violent shock humor formula for some time now, regardless of how entertaining they may be. There's also a growing portion of the film-going world who are critical of Tarantino's very blatant, shot-for-shot remaking of scenes and imagery from his favorite foreign films. Whether this is actual copying or simple inspiration is a debate for another video, but I think there's a clear reason why people have become fatigued with Tarantino in a way they haven't with PTA, who does a really similar thing.
You grow out of Wes Anderson and Tarantino. They don't sustain your attention into adulthood, at least for me and the people I know. Or like you shit on Tarantino. Like there's no like artistic growth. PTA just doesn't have that. Like you're always intrigued about what he's gonna say or do because it is tethered to people and like human relationships. And like that doesn't really get old.
I think on top of the focus on his actors' organic performances, the crucial difference between PTA and Tarantino is that Tarantino is cynical, where PTA is a true optimist. Regardless of their subject matter, PTA's films are humane. Like, Boogie Nights is a film that uses the backdrop of the porn industry to tell a story about a group of lovely people who lost their way. The characters in Magnolia have behaved terribly, but PTA sees that they're remorseful and offers them a path to redemption. Punch Drunk Love is populated with violent outbursts from Barry and shocking car accidents and profanity, but it has such a gentle tone to it. Like, if you rip past all the hard exteriors, you get to this gooey emotional center. It's this amazing fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants movie where everything feels fleeting and urgently human. The Master, more than all of his films, is about lost souls in search of purpose. And in all his movies, save for There Will Be Blood, PTA's characters don't necessarily get what they want, but they still achieve some sort of spiritual fulfillment in one way or another. Even Woodcock in Phantom Thread, who's revealed to be a pathetic and spiteful individual, finds happiness as a submissive to his wife Alma.
You can tell when someone's a grifter and when someone means it. It's very subtle. He cares about Dirk Diggler. And he cares about like Philip Seymour Hoffman, and like even John C. Reilly in Boogie Nights is like an idiot, but he's like, you care about him. That only comes out of like you really loving people, those actors, to allow them to be a little bit hammy. What Philip Seymour Hoffman's doing in that movie is like a bit crazy, like as an actor, like it's such a big swing. And it's like, he just allowed that to happen. And when you watch the movie, you're not even really thinking like, wow, that's a really big swing.
You know, somebody should be making better stuff here that doesn't leave you quite so devastated.
Right. Well, I think some of that devastation comes from just watching the sadness in a lot of the performers' faces that you see nowadays. I mean, you really kind of instantly go to, who are they, how did they get there, and how can I help?
Just from this clip of him talking about stars, you can see his profound curiosity about human beings, who they are, why they do the things they do.
He realizing like what Altman did was like, you just want to hang out with these people. It's like really more about these two people. The Master, is it about Scientology, or do you want to watch these two people being influenced by each other?
It all goes back to that human element. PTA's movies are not about concepts, they're about people, and the concepts that shine through those people. And I do think he's able to do this so well because he writes what he knows. Like this one time he talked about how all the filmmakers around him were making movies about these really cool places they were from, and he was like, I'm from the Valley, so I guess I have to write about that.
There's no cynicism in the sense that he clearly is working through things through his surrogate characters in his movies. When he was making Phantom Thread, he was reflecting on having daughters and his relationship with his wife. Is this a self-indictment movie? One battle after another, I'm like, is this about you more than it is about like the things you're saying it's about? Or like Pinchot, like, is this about like your relationship to your mixed race kids?
Yes.
And their place in the world? Like,
it is.
Yeah.
So this is why every PTA film feels like an event, like seeing something brand new every time, because of that emotional core that strikes a chord. But since PTA writes what he knows, who these films are striking a chord with is going to vary quite a bit.
Pretty much all the protagonists are male.
PTA is a man, and so he's really good at writing men. Like, really good.
I feel like as a man, PTA offers up something interesting in terms of how he shows male relationships in his movies, where there's often like a tenderness and an aggression, and he kind of goes through a spectrum of male emotion where his contemporaries, like Quentin Tarantino, you're getting just pure bravado. You're kind of getting like an emotional depth from these characters that I think is more realistic and allows you to maybe relate more as a man, at least for me.
What's notable about PTA's films is that his characters don't change a lot throughout the course of the films, but many of them experience a sort of big emotional breakthrough, an externalization of their feelings, like Daniel Plainview confessing his sins for an audience of zealots, or Freddie having an unexpected outburst while being processed by Dodd, or Frank breaking down at his father's bedside. It's like the breakdown of a facade, peeking at something tender within that may feel cathartic to male viewers.
There's a thing in a lot of like, I feel like late 90s stuff. It's like an apocalyptic view of internal emotions. Something like American Beauty or Fight Club or Donnie Darko, the world is ending because you feel lonely like young man. And I think the PTA ones are a little smarter and more mature about that stuff, but it's still there. Magnolia is about there's all this pain in the world, but that unites us and it creates literally like a biblical event. There's like this grandness to the emotion in the movies. Most of the movie will have this sort of cool, not quite macho, but this like cool, male thing, and then it builds to this huge, whatever emotional climax. Even in There Will Be Blood, like it feels like an actual vision of hell. And even like Punch Drunk Love, I think appeals to me in a way because it's externalizing in a way that's like, funny and offbeat, this very like sincere emotion and belief in the power of romantic love. I think that's something that men might want to express and find this like cool auteur guy who does that.
Like, I can watch Frank breaking down in Magnolia and feel pain insofar at the thought of losing a parent, but I'm not sure I'm experiencing a sense of liberation that may come from crying at the feet of a father who took my masculinity from me. It just has a different effect,
It makes so much more sense in understanding Freddie and understanding the relationship between him and Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. Now that I've grown and I'm in my later 20s and I kind of understand that character of Freddie a little bit more. Not that I'm like that, but you can kind of see a bit more of yourself in that. It hits so much harder with me, and I would probably say The Master now is my favorite of his movies, and it feels the most true to him in a way.
So now we understand a bit of the why PTA has generated such a cult-like devotion among his younger male fans. As we've seen, it's undeniable that PTA is a talented filmmaker. Like I said, even the movies of his that I'm less wowed by are still undoubtedly well-made movies. He's got extreme technical filmmaking acumen, a wonderful rapport with his actors that has produced some of the best performances of all time, and a willingness to be vulnerable, which are qualities that have resulted in a flourishing career and near universal critical success. And all of this, dazzling camera work, the niche film references, the maverick Gen X spirit, the emotional touchpoints of a distinctly male subjectivity, are the perfect concoction of a filmmaking style that is subtle and enjoyable for everyone, but like kryptonite for men. But unlike some would have it, PTA is not perfect. His movies can sometimes have so much bravura as to tip into obnoxious showmanship. While he's flexible and collaborative with his actors, he's been known to be quite controlling through other parts of the filmmaking process, to the extent that Reynolds' Woodcock was modeled after his own rare experience with acquiescing control to his wife Maya Rudolph during a bout of sickness. And we can't forget Fiona Apple's anecdote about him throwing a chair across the room Barry Egan style when Boogie Nights lost Best Original Screenplay. I mean, the man has described himself as a real arrogant brat. And while I think he's created some very compelling and empathetic female characters, like the headstrong Alma in Phantom Thread trying to fight for control in an oppressive household, or Alana in Licorice Pizza and her confused and bumpy path towards self-actualization, and I know not everyone feels this way, but I did love Perfidia Beverly Hills in One Battle, specifically in her internal struggle between a lifelong commitment towards resistance and motherhood, which I wish the film explored more. Others, though, like Shasta in Inherent Vice, or the fallen women of Boogie Nights, or Clementine in Heart 8, or the various women Freddie sleeps with in The Master, are reduced to sexy background fodder. There's also something to be said for the racial implications of Perfidia's hypersexuality, too. He writes men excellently, but with anyone else, it can be kind of touch and go. Unlike many people I know, I was disappointed by the dissonance in One Battle between the film's modern political backdrop and the 70s-style resistance fighting of its source material, as well as its abandoning of the many interesting questions it poses about revolution in favor of a traditional cat-and-mouse plot. Again, you can read my review on Letterboxd. Licorice Pizza, which admittedly was less acclaimed than One Battle, was bloated and aimless and would have benefited from tighter editing. To me, it kind of felt like an old guy reminiscing, which is sometimes fun and sometimes self-indulgent. I even find that final act in Boogie Nights to be a bit tedious and tacked on, as much as I love the movie. This is all fine. No director can be perfect to everyone. But that's not the impression you get when you're cornered at a party by a PTA bro and express that you didn't love One Battle as much as they did. What Brody was getting at when he criticized auteurs was that while the auteur era of the 60s and 70s led to a generation of independent filmmakers who were pushing the medium forward and making the films they wanted to make, it also led to this idea that any film that has the distinctive markings of a certain filmmaker, like something the audience can identify and go, hey, that's a blank film, made people mistake any such movie as being one of the greats. He said, in other words, it isn't the mere fact of identifiability, of distinctiveness, of having a directorial personality that makes a director good. PTA is really good, but he has become a brand in a sense. Not because of any sort of monotony on his part, but because of his audience, who relish in the long runtimes of his films and the rotating ensemble casts and needle drops and nostalgia. Like, my theater groaned with delight when Steely Dan's Dirty Work started playing in One Battle, even though the song has been used in a ton of popular films and shows already in the past, 10 years. I think there's two things going on here, both of which have pros and cons. Like Tarantino, or really any of the auteurs before them, many of whom worked as film critics themselves, PTA is a film nerd who speaks to other film nerds, who makes them feel part of an in-group where identifying the features of his films and their references is a point scored on knowledge. It makes his movies fun to talk about, And as we discussed in the Male Weebies video, men tend to convene over shared interests. Remember, we talked about bonding through organized activities like joining a sports team or the military. I think film can also be one of those shared interests, but sometimes when you're talking to a PTA bro, it comes across like these are the only films worth talking about. Like there isn't a host of other filmmakers working today whose films are also worth talking about. But as much as this does feel exclusionary, at the very least, men are bonding over something that generally feels quite healthy. Maybe PTA is a cure to the male loneliness epidemic. Maybe that's the silver lining to the cult of the film bro. And the other thing is this. Nayman says, ever since the invention of the studio blockbuster, the understanding that ambitious, challenging American films are now mostly for a self-selecting, elite audience increases the urgency for auteurist approbation. The urge to assert that these are films that will stand up in the midst of a disposable movie culture. The film landscape right now has created a scarcity complex around the production of good, original, mid-budget films. So it's natural that people would feel protective around the few directors who are able to make them. Although you have to think, if these guys are having trouble, just imagine how hard it is for anyone else. PTA is not considered box office gold. He's not Steven Spielberg or Nolan or even Scorsese. So it really is a loud, relatively small and educated in-group that props up his brand as the ultimate filmmaker in retaliation to a time where studio encroachment is worse than it's ever been. This is great in the sense that there's still a demand out there for original filmmaking and a host of people willing to defend it. Bad in the sense that it's not great people are sometimes unwilling to be critical. I also think that people can genuinely just love all his films. But why this sometimes frustrates me is that I might not relate to PTA's films, but I think he's an incredible artist, for all the reasons I said above. You can't copy and paste emotional resonance, that heart he brings to his work. But I also think great art is made greater by the discourse it leaves in its wake, an interested body of people who are willing to critique it because they believe in it.
His films are always surprising. Like, even if he misses, and he does miss, he doesn't only make like perfect movies. Like even his best movies have a lot of misses in them. It's always surprising, and it always feels like he's trying to make something great, even if it doesn't land. And I'd rather see someone try to make something amazing and maybe it doesn't get all the way there than someone who plays it safe. Like, it doesn't always work. Like, sometimes his movies are bloated, sometimes the atmosphere isn't good, but just seeing someone trying to be so ambitious in his filmmaking is inspiring. I feel like he trusts his audience, which is something that really bothers me in a lot of movies that I end up watching that I dislike. It's because I feel like the filmmaker doesn't have that much trust in the audience. I mean, it might be the studio, who knows who's making these decisions sometimes, but I think I like when an artist takes you and brings you out into the woods, so to speak, and lets you be lost for a while. And I find that in a lot of the pieces of art that I enjoy the most, like be it film, literature, or music, I like when someone takes me out there and lets me be lost and lets me have to trust them to take me back.
I like PTA, you like PTA, let's call the whole thing off.
I think we got it.
So, studio greed has made it really hard to get an original film off the ground these days. Luckily, our very own YouTube star Patrick Willems has managed to make one of his very own, which premiered this month. His film is called The Dinner Plan. It's about a guy who gets pressured into going to a dinner party at his boss's place, only to realize they're serving food he's deeply allergic to. Patrick has described it as a Brian De Palma film, except the question is less, what if someone gets murdered, and more, what if someone vomits and ruins the party? The Dinner Plan is a sophisticated foray for Patrick into the world of filmmaking. It's got great visuals and stars an ensemble cast of some really amazing actors working today, including Zach Cherry from Severance, and it was all made possible by Nebula. Nebula is a streaming service that's creator-founded and creator-led, which means we get a ton of creative control over the videos we make. It's a really varied platform, so right now you can watch a full-blown movie like The Dinner Plan, which was produced by Nebula, a whole bunch of original series like my very own called Taboo on Screen, as well as all my past videos ad-free on Nebula. You can even watch Nebula videos offline with their app. If you're interested in watching some really amazing original content, you can sign up using the link below, and you can support me directly and get Nebula for a 40% off annual plans. Then there's lifetime memberships, which cost $500, $300 if you use my link, and last you forever. And with the holiday season coming up, you might want to share everything Nebula has to offer with your family and friends. So Nebula is now offering annual gift cards. Use the link gift.nebula.tv/broedeschanel to give a year of Nebula to a friend for just $36. Go do it. You won't regret it. So go to nebula.tv/broedeschanel or click the link in the description for 40% off right now. Special thank you to Syed Hassan, Malpertui, Morgan, Cooper Stimson, Nadia C., Nick, Jenny Eller, J. Frost McFinnigan, Gabriel M., The Wiz Daniel, Edward Yu, Andrew Nguyen, Carolyn Stowe, Basil Ann, Connor O'Keefe, Gavin Borden, Sharma, Smith, Daniel Sardunas, Jenya, The Double Chip, Ryan Blythe, Lady Diane, Lotaire Roulan, Maya Kamaeva, Natalie Popper, Naomi Nakagawa, Burrow Fiddle, Lauren Woodring, Susie, Nathan King, Elena, Scott Barnett, William Elderfield, Julia Campana, Mr. Allen, Luis Eduardo Charoba, Jay, Marwan, Sean Purnell, Danny Hall, Alexis, Nafis Bullock, Carrie Gavin, RSS, Thomas Dillon, Friedjof Holstrom, Alex Short, and Kelly Wolf for supporting this channel.